Greetings to all my tech heads out there in the KevTechify nation, and if you're new here, welcome. In this episode, we're going to look at data link frames. We'll be discussing the frame fields, layer 2 addresses, and then finally we're going to look at LAN and WAN frames. This episode is part of my series on Introduction to Networks. I'm Kevin here at KevTechify. Let's get this adventure started. The data link layer, once again, that PDU, it's named the frame. So the frame is at layer 2. The data is encapsulated. Here at the data link layer, we get a header, we get a trailer. The data link layer, when it does its encapsulation, is the only layer that puts a trailer on the end. And what I mean by a trailer is it has the data, we put some at the beginning, and the trailer puts data at the end. Data link layer is the only layer to put data there. Now, we have three parts. We have the header, we have the data in the middle, and then we have the trailer. Now, depending upon what protocol we use, what data link protocol we use, the fields vary. And there can be a number of different fields in there looking at the different protocols we use. The amount of control information we have carried within the frame, it varies according to the access control information and the different logical topologies we use. So from different networks to different networks, the frame headers and trailers, all that information, it could be different depending upon what type of networks we're going through. Now, here's the frame field. This is what we typically see. Here we have the data in the center. The data here includes all the data from the upper layers. Part of it is the IP information from layer 3. So we have IP, which is layer 3 here. We have that, but that constitutes all of our data. Here. When it gets passed down from layer 3 to layer 2, we put our trailer, we put our headers on it. The header here, there's more fields than this, but these are the main parts. So we give you, hey, the frame is starting. We give you addressing. Addressing here looks at the MAC address because that's a layer 2 address. We look at our destination goes first, and then we look at our source where it's going. So there's multiple addressing in there. What type of frame are we sending, and the different controls that go with it. And then at the end we have our error detection. Once again, remember, layer 2, the data link layer, only does error detection. It does not do correction. It'll detect an error, and then if it detects an error, it'll delete that frame. Now, how it does this error detection here is it uses a CRC check, a cyclic redundancy check. And what that does is there's an algorithm where it takes and it puts all of the data, once again, the data here is in the gray, in the red square. It takes all that data and runs it through an algorithm, and you get a number. And that number goes in that error detection field in the frame check sequence field. It uses the CRC value, it puts it in there. It sends it across to the next device, and then it computates that again just before it sends it out. And if anybody's changed a single bit in that data, now this data here, it looks really small, but if you were actually to draw this out, the header is this long, the data would probably wrap around the room 50, 60 times. And then we'd have the trailer on here. So this data is not actually represented in its true size. And so if somebody would change just one little bit in there, we'd run it through the cyclic redundancy check, and we would get a different number. It would compare the number it got in, the number it calculated. If that number is the same, it rebuilds the frame and sends it on to the next device. If it's a different number, we're assuming it was an error. Maybe somebody broke into the system and changed the value. And at that point in time, or an error occurred. And at that point in time, we're just going to get rid of the data. We're not going to correct it. We're not going to get that data resent. That's the responsibility of upper layers. How layer 2 addressing works is, once again, remember, layer 2 frames are concerned with going from network interface card to NIC to NIC to NIC. So from a PC to a router to a router to a NIC on a server, like this example shows. And what happens here is we get our data. And once again, part of our data here is our layer 3, and the data is all over here. We have layer 3 here. We have the encapsulation. And then the addressing here, at the beginning, we put our destination MAC address. Our destination MAC address is this address right here on this router. We're sending from RPC to router 1. And we're putting this MAC address here. That is our destination MAC address. Our source is where is it coming from. So that would be the MAC address of the PC here. We send it there. We send this data out. It travels across this network to this router. At this point in time, it strips off the layer 2 information, looks at the layer 3 information here, and says, is this my IP address? Nope, it's not mine. It's not my address. It's not the destination one. So I'm going to rebuild it and send it on to the next router. How do I know what router to send it to? That's where the routing protocols happen at layer 3. They have routing protocols that says, in order to get to this network, go out this interface. And that's what happens. We take our data here, we strip off all of our destination and MAC addresses, and now we rebuild it. This time we change our destination network interface address and our source. When we rebuild it here for the second time, when we're sending between R1 and R3, we are looking at the destination MAC address. We're on R1 right now, and we're going to R2. So this is the destination network interface here. And so that MAC address goes here as our destination. Our source, we're leaving R1. Notice how the layer 3 address never changes. It never changes until it reaches its destination. Now we're able to send data from R1 to R2 and get there. R2 then takes off the layer 2 header, takes off the MAC addresses, and looks at layer 3 and says, the destination address. Am I the destination address? Nope, I'm not it. But I know if I send it out this network interface card, it's going to reach the final destination. And so it stripped it off in order to see the layer 3 information. So we stripped off our layer 2 MAC addresses, our frame there. Now we are looking to send from router 2 to router 3. And so once again, we now use the new NICs, the MAC addresses associated to that NIC. We need our destination network interface card MAC address. That goes here. We are coming from router 2. That's the MAC address here. That goes here. And so we build our frame again. We send it off to our final destination. Our final destination gets it. It strips off the layer 2 address information, looks at the layer 1 address information, the layer 3 IP address information, and says, is this my IP address? Well, look at that. I am the web server. This is my IP address. I can now strip off the layer 3 address, and we can go through layer 4 all the way up to 7, do what we need to do. And that's how the data travels through the network. In order to build the different frames for the different networks, the LAN frames, WAN frames, they're all a little bit different because we're using the different technologies. They have different ways of transferring that data, different ways of encoding that data onto the different medias, fiber, copper, across the air waves. We have all different methods. And so we look at that, and these methods are all a little bit different. Each protocol performs different media access control because of the different media, so we control it all that way. We have to develop basically a new way of doing it for a different type of media, for a different technology, and that's what we have done here. It was my pleasure to provide you with this wonderful episode on data link frames. If you like this episode and you got value out of it, and of course, depending upon what platform you're using, please click that like button, give a 5-star rating, leave a comment. This all helps me bring you more great content. Please take a minute to subscribe to my channel. All of my social and contact information are on my website, KevTechify.com. You can get all these episodes in video and podcast form. In the upper right is my playlist for my series on Introduction to Networks. In the bottom right is one of my favorite videos that I linked just for you. Thank you so much for watching this episode of my series on Introduction to Networks. Once again, I'm Kevin. This is KevTechify. I'll see you next time for another great adventure.